All right, how's that, Kevin? Is that look all right?
Great.
I look smashing. I look awesome online. Did any of you ever have that, can you hear me okay without the microphone? I'm going to try for a while. Do you ever have that evening where you go, man, I'm really excited. It's about 10:30. I could sleep and just crush it until about 7:30 and I'll feel refreshed. And then your eyes open at 4:43, and then it's 5:02, and then you just get up. Well, that was me. So hang in there with me today, because that was just this last night. And so I'll get warmed up, I promise. But true story, I did get my wife a bundt cake pan for Valentine's Day.
It's better than a vacuum.
Don't judge me. So no, she made me this awesome chocolate cake. And on Tuesday, and she actually was trying to be gracious toward my mom, who passed away in 2012. My mom had has this bundt cake pan from 1932 or whatever, and it just, the cake didn't come out so well because it's stuck, and so she thought maybe the pan was not good anymore. So we had a little ceremony and gave her a new bundt cake pan. No, it's very selfish, because what happens for me? I get bundt cakes.
Yeah.
So it's been working out really well. So men, always have that dual gift going. It's really important. No, totally not romantic, but Julie and I have been married almost 28 years, so March 17th is our 28th anniversary. So, thank you. She is a loving and patient woman, and this morning we're going to talk a little bit about our journey with our families. And so family of origin is the first session we're going to start with, and maybe, hopefully, some of you have already recognized that your families of origin are probably a little different in your spouse-to-be may have a very different experience growing up than you. And so we're going to talk about that a little bit. What I found in my counseling practice over the last 20 years is that families, like it or not, are a real hot spot, okay? And so I want to kind of work through a little bit that today, and then give you some really good ideas on how to hang in there with families, and maybe some, I don't like the word rules, but maybe a framework for how you're going to operate together in relation to both of your families. Okay? How many of you come from a big family? Big meaning lots of siblings, cousins, everybody's in everybody's business. Yeah? Okay, everybody's got an opinion about everything, right? How many of you are only children? Just you? Okay? A few? All right. How many of your mothers just think you're the best and can do no wrong? Yeah, all right. Okay. Beware, your spouses, of those people. Because you will never do anything right with Golden Boy at the helm. So, no, I'm just kidding. So we'll work through some of that and really talk about some of the finer points. And we're going to work through a little bit of a progression. So with me speaking today, I'll get you right out of here at 4 o'clock. It'll be awesome. And I'm really informal. I'll get more energy as I go, I promise. And that'll be dangerous. And any questions, anytime you want to share anything, ask questions, raise your hand, just yell it out, whatever it is. Let's just relate and explore together, okay? So I'm going to have lots of ideas for you. I may take some rabbit trails, but I'll get back, and we'll try to learn as much as we can today. And if you want to teach me anything, that'd be awesome too. I'll be open to learning some new things. Hey, look at I think we're right. Is it second session? You guys were here last Sunday, and then today's first Saturday, so we're going to really rip into it. First or second session on there, family of origin. At the top it says, the great escape, almost. I think that the Bible does address marriage and does address family of origin. And so from Genesis, right off the bat, marriage is about a man shall leave his father and his mother and hold fast or cleave to his wife, some translations, and the two shall become one flesh. The man and his wife were both naked and were not ashamed. Hey, how's that sound? Yes, Naked Friday. So we realized that over time, we didn't necessarily know what this meant. We just weren't really taught what it is meant. What is it to leave and cleave? So think about this, men. What are men raised to do? Think about this for a little bit. What's the implication? What's implied, men, about you and your life? What are you going to do in your life when it relates to your family?
Provide.
You're going to grow up. You're going to provide. But tell me about what your parents expect of the man. What's the message? What are you going to grow up and do? You're going to grow up and you're going to carry on the family name. Now, women, what are girls raised to do? You know, this isn't a sexist thing. This is has been a cultural, it's been a historical thing. What do we have? Make cakes. Maybe. But overall, isn't it that, hey, we're going to raise you to be a great woman, and then you're going to go off and what? Get married. So what is your dad going to do when you hit the altar? Give you away. So what's implied there? The woman goes away, but what happens to the man? The man stays. He's carrying on the family tradition. He's carrying on the family name, right? You ever thought about it that way? I think, and I don't know if this is anecdotal or if it really plays out, and Kevin maybe and some other of you folks that have been at this for a while, I think traditionally, at least in my counseling practice and in my life, in my experience, that I think that women, wives, have a harder time with the husband's mother than the other way around. And I think it's part of that idea that the son's going to carry on the family name and the family interests and all that. And I think for the man, I have 3 boys in my family, so I have 2 older brothers, so it was just 3 boys. And so my mom had a hard time with all of the boys' spouses. My mom had ideas on what the boys needed to do. Well, who had other ideas? Yeah, our wives. And so I do see a little more conflict with the husband's family traditionally when it comes to relationship with the son's wives. I don't know, have some of you experienced a little bit of a difference? Maybe your guy is much more easygoing with your family than you are with his family. How many of you say that's kind of showing up right now a little bit? This is the honesty part. Yeah. Okay. So it did for us. Okay. So I grew up in a home where my family was very critical, very fast, very opinionated. Okay. So 3 boys. So my mom learned how to throw shoes and hit us with wooden spoons. Whatever she needed to do to corral us, she would do it. She'd grab a hand of hair. She would, try to kneel on us to subdue us, to try to get stuff out of our mouths. I mean, my mom, little Italian lady, just rough and tumble. She kind of learned to be with 3 boys, all under the age of 5. My brother Steve and my brother Tom are exactly a year apart. And then a couple miscarriages, and then me 2 years later. So 3 boys, and my mom was pretty young when my folks got married. So my mom is this little fast, dominant, kind of self-absorbed lady, a little Italian. Her parents were from Italy, and my dad was a self-made salesman guy who lied about his age to get away from his abusive father to get into the army. And so when they got together, it was like this perfect storm, right? So real calm, the German guy and the Italian lady, So just peaceful and calm, right? So my wife grew up in a family that was very validating. Her dad was a company man. He was in the Air Force. He learned mechanics. He started working for Lockheed Martin. He and his wife met in Casa Grande. That's how I say it. I say it the right way. they met young too, and they started having a family, and then mom was like this super housewife, Christian, conservative, kind lady, and dad was just a hardworking, grew up really poor, and ended up working for the airlines. He was at Northwest Airlines for about 40 years, doing maintenance and supervising, and didn't have a lot of money growing up, but they made it work. And so Julie, my wife, she has an older sister, Jana, and then 2 younger sisters, so 4 girls in their family. 3 boys in mine, 4 girls in hers. Now, the atmosphere in my wife's family is that everybody compliments each other and everybody's kind. And if you have something to say, you pray about it, and you look at it, and you probably don't really say it because you don't want anybody's feelings to get hurt. In my family, it was just the opposite. If it ran through your head, you mentioned it. And so, talk about difference. And so I'll share a little bit today about what actually happened. But the differences in our families are very striking, very striking. And so I want you to start thinking about, as we go through this, how your families really are, how they really operate, and how you really carry some of those things. And then let's start figuring out, in your leaving and cleaving with each other, how we may have to rework how both of you operate, especially with your families, to come up with something that's great for the both of you. Okay, so we'll flesh that out a lot. All right, so let's look at the outline here. Believe it or not, your family's impacted you. Okay, so whether what you want to admit it or not, you've been affected by your family of origin. So I want to look at, just real quick, some things that you've taken from your families, and things maybe you haven't thought about enough. I just want to draw some attention to it this morning. Think about some gifts that your family, that you may have gotten from your family that you are bringing with you into your marriage. Think about some tangible items. I know this is going to sound kind of strange, but I brought a bowling shirt into my marriage, and 6 months in, I couldn't find it. I was like, honey, have you seen my favorite shirt? No. So, you got all kinds of things that you love that you've had for a long time, and you're going to get married, and you're going to blend these 2 families, these 2 houses, these 2 people with things. Some of the things that you cherish may push the buttons of your spouse. And so just think about this for a little bit. You know, how are you going to decorate your master bedroom? Well, I had my Bon Jovi poster up, you know, and I wanted to bring that into my marriage. Well, my wife probably is not too hot about that poster, you know. So just think about some of those things that you've brought with you through college or through your various apartments or whatnot. And now that you're starting to come together, those things that you've always had may not be very popular with each other. Think about, you know, how emotional you are about some of those things. My wife's not a big collector of things, but I learned that she did have a soft spot for some things that I didn't grow up with. So I didn't grow up with figurines. I didn't grow up with things that were handmade, really. Some ancient Italian things, but you know, like quilted stuff or whatever, and my wife did. And so I, to my shame, I was kind of rough with some of her stuff because I didn't really like it. And I didn't think it was very cool at all. So I was like, okay, I'll take this quilt that her great-grandmother made, you know, and kind of stuff it into the closet. Well, what happens to Julie when she comes in and I'm like organizing stuff? You know, so believe it or not, even something like that is attached to your past. It's attached to your family. And so starting to recognize what you're bringing in, I think, can be a good first move to dealing with the differences between you. Think about traditions that you expect to continue. So some people have gotten in fights in my office about what they're going to do for Christmas. Well, my family always opens Christmas gifts in the morning. My family always goes to service at night, and we open gifts at night, Christmas Eve. And they have these great rationales for their traditions. And it can create a lot of conflict. So before the wedding, let's start talking about some things that would be great for the both of you to honor some of those traditions. So think about some things that maybe you could say, well, that's weird, you know. But yeah, but my family, you know, Julie's family always, they have their rituals on Christmas morning, even to this day, 50 years later. You know, they make this strawberry orange ice cream shake thing for breakfast. And then they open gifts. And then 9 hours later, you have a meal, you know. And I'm like, no, you get up and you eat, you know, and you eat whatever you want, you know. It shouldn't be restrictive, especially on Christmas, you know. And so sometimes there can be some conflict there. So just start thinking about some of those traditions that each one of you expects to continue, but would it really conflict with what you both might want? So let's start at least thinking about that. Some people are early morning people, and some people are night people. Part of blending, realizing that you may be holding on to something that you always did, and that came out of your family. And now you're working on starting a new family. So in leaving and cleaving, when you cleave to each other and become one flesh, you are now a new entity. You don't really represent your family of origin. You do in some ways, but your identity now is as a new family. And so we've got to keep working through, you know, some of those influences that may impact your union, okay? And I found that family of origin is one of the strongest factors that influence people in general. And so think about how strong some of these things are for you that you bring in. My wife was a car person. They hated flying because they could fly with the airlines, and so whenever Dad had a chance to do a road trip, he'd pile the girls in the car and do a road trip. My family, not so much. Both of my parents smoked when I was growing up. We had a 1975 Buick Regal with crushed velour interior, and both of them smoke in there. When it's 110 out in Arizona, are the windows open or closed? So, yeah. So, I grew up always car sick. I hate car trips. My wife loves to get in the car and drive cross country to go see her family, you know, so conflict. So I've learned over time how to do a car trip with my wife to make it good for the both of us. And so we'll talk about that next session.
You started smoking?
I started smoking, yes. Yes. So she smokes a pack a day now. Everybody's fine, except for my tracheal bronchitis. Think about family rules, you know. How in your family, what were the rules? How did you deal with conflict or feelings? How did you deal with money, with problems? My family hit stuff head on, but when we had a financial issue, my dad was in sales. And so if he had a good month, we'd go out for steak. We'd spend it. They had credit cards. My wife's family, every penny was pinched. So she's the saver, I was the spender. If I had $200 in college, man, I was in Fat City. I was good, you know. And if my wife had $2,000, she was worried. And so that came right out of our families as well. Think about how you've learned to operate. Think about how your family operates. Do you minimize feelings to keep the peace? Do you patronize your mom because she's not very hardy emotionally? Does everybody have to not say anything around your folks because of their sensitivities? I grew up from, like I said, a family that just shares what we think. Well, when Julie and I first got married, we'd go visit her family in St. Louis, and she would give me the directives before we got there. Now, don't say this, and make sure they know that you didn't drink as much as you did when you were in high school, and make sure that you don't say jackass, or make sure, you know, all these things, right? So I had this whole list of what I wasn't allowed to do because it would hurt somebody's feelings, okay? And then in my family, I was always worried that they were going to hurt Julie's feelings. So we had very different systems. And here's the interesting part and the sad part. Most of our conflicts early on were always about how one of our family members did something that impacted us, and we wanted to talk about it, but it really hurt the other person's feelings, or pride, or tradition, or whatever. And we'd end up at odds because something my mom did or didn't do. And I realized that we couldn't keep operating the same way we were operating. We had to do something together and apart with our families to make it better for us. And sometimes that's very hard. Because for some of you, your safest people may include your parents, may include a sister, may include a brother that you've always helped in your life, that you automatically give $100 a month to. Well, your spouse-to-be may want that $100 for your family and not for him. And so it will be an issue for you. And I want to give you some ideas on working it out. But I want you to be really quickened to the judgments or the styles of each of your families. Do you suppress everything? Has your family always suppressed everything? Are you self-sufficient? Do you prove yourself at all costs? Will you do anything for anybody on any day? Well, that's just how my family is what I've heard people say. No, I help anybody who asks. I don't care if it's a Saturday or a Sunday. That's the right thing to do. Well, what if your wife isn't feeling well? What if you haven't seen each other for 2 weeks? Are you going to break that tradition to care for your spouse? She's going to want you to. He's going to want you to. So we've got to keep working on the influence and really face it. Okay. So just think about some of those messages that come from your families. Now, my family wasn't conflict avoidant. Julie's family was. So if my brother walked into my house, I'd go, "Why are you wearing that sweatshirt? That looks like the one I gave you when we were in 5th grade, you know?" And then Julie would go, "Oh man, I can't believe he said that. Oh, it's going to be a big fight." And then my brother would go, "Shut up, John." And then we'd go, "Hey, how you doing?" You know? And my wife was like, she was just on this roller coaster. You know? It was very strange. Our first Christmas together, my mom had these Christmas stockings for all of us that she made like out of felt and stuff back in the 60s. I'm old now. I just turned 50 last September. So that's why I need 8 hours of sleep. So my mom had these stockings. We had these stockings growing up, and she'd fill them. And the tradition in our family is that before anybody opened any gifts, we would go into our stockings. And some of our stocking gifts were foreshadows of the gifts that you had under the tree, like batteries, right? Oh, what are these batteries for? I can't believe, you know. And then in my family, we only got like 3 or 4 gifts, okay? And then one of them was the nice one, and then the other ones were ones you just trashed, right? And you just throw in the yard and play it like a Nerf football or something, right? So when Julie and I were first married, my mom had put, somehow my brothers were in town and we were all there, and it was Julie's first official Christmas with my family. And so Mom had put out our stockings. And they had our names on it. Mine has a little picture of this little boy made out of felt, you know, and then they had glitter and all this stuff. We still have them. And they're just chock full of stuff that she always got us when we were kids. And it was almost like my mom was trying to recapture, you know, and she was also trying to prove to my wife and Tom's, my middle brother's wife, that somehow we were hers and then our wives were illegitimate, you know. And so, I mean, it was a rough scene, I gotta tell you. And I really apologize in advance if this happens to any of you, but it'll be a great thing to work through in your marriage. So we open our stockings, and my wife's sitting there, and she's just kind of watching everything happen, and I'm like going, well, this feels weird, you know. My wife's like on the outs here, and then Tom's wife Kelly she was sitting over here, and Julie was sitting over here, and those 3 boys were here. It's like my mom is treating us like babies again, you know, and Steve and Tom and I were looking at each other like, what's going on, you know. So we went through the stockings and did the obligatory, you know, gift thing, and at the time I'm 20, I just turned 23. Okay, we got married when I was 22, Julie was 23. I just turned 23. And so here I am sitting there, and I'm like, okay, we're doing Christmas. And our wives are sitting there, and they don't know what's going on. And so after we opened our gifts from the stockings, we just all kind of sat there, and there was just like this pregnant pause, like, okay, and what do we do next, you know? And so my mom gets up, and she goes in the living room, she goes under the couch, and she pulls out this you guys don't know about this because you're in the digital age, but there was a desk calendar, because my wife was a high school teacher at the time, and it was this desk calendar, you know, big kind of, what's that called? The, you know, like the leather, not really leather, but just the plaque thing that sits on your desk with the calendar, right? And then when you're done writing on the calendar pad, you take off that and you got the next month, right? Well, my mom had taped a bunch of candy and a Pez dispenser and stuff to this desk calendar. She pulls it out from the couch and goes to Julie and goes, aha! I almost made you cry because you thought you weren't going to get a stocking. My mom is saying this to my wife. What is going on? And I'm telling you, Julie, you could tell she was fighting back tears. Like, I can't believe I'm being treated this way. And all of us were used to my mom doing stuff like that. I grew up with it. You know, I grew up with going, oh, Mom, you just can't do that, you know. And Julie was not used to it, right? And so when we left that day, what do you think was going on for my wife? She was like, what the heck did I get myself into, you know? I'm going to have a lifetime of this? Well, what happened when she started talking about my family? Well, it started pushing my buttons. So we got in a little thing, and big thing. And then, so flash forward, we end up in graduate school in Denver, and she's sad, and we decide to go have Christmas at her family, so we get in the car, and we drive 15 hours to St. Louis, and we go have Christmas. The first Christmas I had with her family, I think we were 3 years married. 9 hours. In my family, we grab a gift and rip it open and go, hey, thanks, Mom, thanks, Dad, that's awesome. We go on to the next one, thanks, Mom, thanks, Dad, that's awesome. And then, okay, it's 8:30, let's have some breakfast. And then we go play with our toys or whatever, right? Well, in Julie's family, her mom is like this professional shopper, and she can turn $100 into 1,000. And so at the time, Jana was married, Alan, and then me and Julie, and then her 2 younger sisters. So we're sitting around the living room, and her youngest sister, Carla, was probably 16 at the time, 18 at the time, goes under the tree and gets all the gifts and puts a pile in front of everybody. And I literally have 20 things in front of me. I'm new to the family. I have 20 gifts in front of me. You know, Mom liked to buy a bunch of T-shirts and shirts and, you know, socks and stuff like that, but she wraps everything. If Mom gives you chapstick, it's wrapped. So guess what I do now at Christmas? When my wife gets a stocking for Christmas, what do? I wrap everything. And I stink at wrapping. Chapstick, anything, I wrap it. So get the, I mean, this is the picture. Everybody has a pile of gifts in front of them, and guess what they do? One at a time. And here's the kicker. My wife's family's validating. So when Kristen opens up a thing and it's a shirt from Mom, everybody's got to make a comment about the shirt. Oh, honey, that shirt's beautiful, and Mom got me one last year, and it's still great, and you're going to love it. Oh, and then her sister, Carla, would say, and that matches your eyes. You know, Kristen, you're always the prettiest one in our family. And I remember the time in 4th grade where you just came in and everybody just lit up. And they have all of these stories. 9 hours. And there's a picture of me sitting back in the chair like this. I fell asleep during Christmas. And Julie's like, what's your problem? Right now, you have 2 sets of families expecting you to do one thing on Christmas. So we've got to start thinking about how has this all impacted you and what's going to work best for you. And then how are you going to deal with it when mother-in-law pushes every last nerve? Or they're at your house for Christmas and your father-in-law tells you what candle you can light and what candle you can't light. Or how loud the music needs to be in your own home. Or eventually what your kids should get for Christmas and what he should enjoy. even if it's a true story, an axe that makes a sound where your sister-in-law is offended and then attacks your mother because he's not allowed to have weapons. It all happens, okay? So we've got to figure out how your team does what your, it's been awesome. So think about what you've taken from your family. Keep going. So logistical, right now you have two sets of expectations. Just remember, a lot of those things came out of your family of origin. I never made my bed because I'm getting back in there anyway. Well, Julie's rule is you make the bed. You don't want dust in there, and if anybody ever came in to see it, it would look nice. So you got to adjust. We'll talk more about caring for each other in the next session, but think about what happens. If your wife, her feelings are hurt because there's a quarter of tank of gas in the car, and you're the guy that didn't remember to fill it up. And what's your first response? Honey, it's a Toyota. You can go 200 miles with a quarter tank of gas. I've only run out of gas 5 times in my life. What's the big deal? My dad did it this way. His dad did it this way. So just think through how much this stuff's going. Now go even deeper. What has been your role in your family? Do your parents rely on you to be the problem solver? Are you the peacemaker? Are you the rebel? Are you the one that fixes everything and moves on? Are you the one that's disconnected? What has been your role? And how is one of you who may be the people pleaser and one of you that may be the rescuer or the lost one or the independent one, how's that going to go? Especially when your family calls and asks for something. I had a client this week whose mother was upset with her. She's 32 years old. The mother's upset with her because she won't give her $1,000. Out of the blue. The girl's a nurse, lady's a nurse, and her mom has had 6 husbands and is on food stamps and calls her every month for money. And you know what? She's given her lots of money over time. The daughter's actually become the mother in the relationship. And she's locked in. And it's really hard on her. It's really hard on the family. So start thinking about what those family roles are, what those expectations are. How do you view money? What are the differences between your families? Like I said, I was a spender, my wife was a saver. And so now over time we've learned to really match on those things. So what I want you to do, let's take a little discussion time. And I want you to think about how has your family impacted you, and how do you think your families are different? So I want you to discuss it a little bit, and think about some of these areas that I wrote down there for you. Think about which ones seem to be more pressing for you, and highlight some of the differences with each other. I know some of you have done this before, but I want you to try talking about it in a real calm way about the differences. And then after we get through the next session, you'll see I want to give you some real practical ways of dealing with your feelings and dealing with differences in a way that's good for your marriage. So let's take a little bit of time and just talk with each other which of these things really kind of get you going a little bit. And then no fighting, and it's just interesting information. That some of you, I've heard a little bit from the rumblings talk about, some of you have very different cultural backgrounds. And so my wife knew nothing about Italians. And even though my last name is Michael, my dad's kind of a European mutt. He thought we were German all these years, and then his uncle ended up figuring out that they're mostly Irish. So, but it's kind of the same effect anyway, right? So we're kind of passionate. But when my wife first met my grandma, my grandparents didn't come. My grandmother was from Naples, Italy, and my grandfather was from Sicily. And I grew up pretty close to them in Chicago, and we moved out here when I was 7. And a year after we were married, we had an opportunity to go visit my grandparents. And my grandma was shorter than my mom, and her name was Philomena. And kind of broken English even after all those years. And so we go up in their condo, and Julie walks in the door, and my grandma walks up to her, and she grabs her cheeks. and then she like squeezes her arms, and then like grabs her hips, just like checking her out, like this girl's got to eat, you know, like, and Julie's looking at me like, what's happening? You know? We just go with it, honey, you know. And she came over to me and grabbed me, you know, and so, and then we had sauce and pasta, and Grandma made the best meatballs. They made homemade sausage. I grew up putting the, you know, pork meat together and then putting the casings on the thing and helping my grandpa make homemade sausage and all this stuff. Stuff my wife never even knew, you know, existed. And then Grandma would be mad if you didn't have seconds, you know. And Julie didn't know what to do. It's like, I don't want seconds, you know. So just go with it, you know. And then, so culturally, and that wasn't even very extreme compared to some. And some of you have different, you know, religious backgrounds too, based on your heritage. So you may be, you know, Jewish, you know, combined with maybe, I mean, you name it, could be Hispanic culture, whatever, and people find each other, and that's awesome. And so we've got to figure out, the best way to honor each other's family of origin and still create something that only works for the two of you together. And so that's why, like on that next sheet there, I wanted to cover this before we ended this session, which I think kind of covers everything for your relationship. And you'll probably hear about this passage a lot in your married life and in the premarital work you're doing. But the Ephesians 5 passage is so important, especially. Let me just kind of show you how it works through here. So Paul writes, submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. Wives, submit to your own husbands as to the Lord. For the husband is head of the wife, even as Christ is head of the church, his body, and himself its Savior. Now as the church submits to Christ, so also wives should submit in everything to their husbands. Husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her, that he might sanctify her, having cleansed her by the washing of water with the word, so that he might present the church to himself in splendor, without spot or wrinkle or any such thing, that she might be holy and without blemish. In the same way, husbands should love their wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself. It's very interesting that Paul caps this with, in that section, he caps it with, therefore a man shall leave his father and mother, hold fast to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. This mystery is profound, saying that it refers to Christ and the church. Isn't that interesting? That in the New Testament, he carries over that Genesis 2 passage about husbands and wives leaving and cleaving. That your union is about both of you submitting to Christ, so then you would be able to be open and vulnerable and love each other the way God loves you, which would create a mutual submission. I won't do the Greek lesson, but the word submit, Pastor Lucas had shared a while back about the idea of submission, that it's not what we these days think about submission, like UFC fighting, but that word is hupotasso in the Greek, which literally means to voluntarily subject yourself or place yourself next to or under another. It's voluntary. So that's why your love for each other will create safety, so you can be submissive equally to each other. And the way you love each other, if it's the way Jesus loves you, then you have a safe union that can become more about one flesh. And what happens, I think, with families is that they have an idea for how you should be, and for a long time you were that way. Because you didn't have to submit to anyone else. You didn't even have to submit to them. You kind of chose to, because those are the people that you know, that you knew, that you grew up with, that hopefully were some of the safest people in your life. Even some of the unsafe families that we have, we still submit to them too, because we think, well, that's what you do, they're family. That even though they suck, they still have my back. But we're more willing that way, right? So how much more could we create a new family with one another out of reverence for Christ? So that mutual submission makes your union an egalitarian, an equal union. And so no matter what happens with your families, you're the ones that live with each other. Okay, so I want to give you some ideas on how to work out this mutual submission as it relates to dealing with your family. So I did what I could to synthesize it in about 7 things here. So let's just go through those before we wrap up. And again, this is coming from a guy. How I first started out is that my wife was trying to honor me by being nice to my family. I met the nicest woman in the world. She is not like anybody in my family. She's nice, okay? And so and guys, don't get me wrong. I love my folks. I love my family. It's just my life with my wife and my life in Christ has changed my heart. It's changed my life. I don't operate like my family operates as much anymore because my heart's changed. My view has changed. My fidelity to my wife has grown. And so she and I are very different today than we were 28 years ago, 30 years ago. And so I want to encourage you that that's a good thing. It's a good thing to create your own family. And it doesn't mean you're neglecting or rejecting your families of origin. It just means you get a chance to make something for yourselves in the Lord that may be very different than how your families see things or how your families do it. I want you to just give yourselves the okay to make that okay, no matter what anybody else says, and still be reverent to each other's families. So my mom used to blow up my wife a little bit. They'd go shopping, and my wife was thinking she was being nice to me by spending an afternoon with my mom. So they'd go to the store or whatever, and Julie would try something on, and my mom would go, I don't know if you like that kind of thing, but okay, you know. And Julie'd come home just in tears, just feeling like she got hit by a bus, you know. But the sad part is, here's what I did with it. I was going, honey, don't worry about it. That's just how she is. Honey, just blow it off. That's how she is. You should know that by now. We've been together for so long. And how do you think Julie felt when I did that kind of move? Yeah, it was like, hey, it's okay. We're going to let my mom be this way toward us. We're just going to take it, and at least we have each other. And it wasn't very protective. It wasn't very caring. It wasn't very sensitive. I was used to it. My dad's pretty critical too. He loves Julie to death, but he'll say things off the cuff that kind of hurt. And all she's ever tried to do is help. And then when she thinks that he's saying something that's telling her that she's not very helpful, you know, like she's got to be checked, like, you know, why did you blow this kind of thing? And she's very sensitive to that. And so I used to not care for her very well and go, well, that's just how he is. Well, 28 years later, 30 years later, it still feels the same way. When we see Dad at church or whatever, there's still some of those same messages. We'll talk about that next. But how we deal with that, I think, needs to be about your care for each other, your one flesh relationship. Okay? I didn't do a great job caring for my wife because I was asking her to do it like I did it. And how I did it is I just blew it off. I had a thick skin. I grew up with criticism. She didn't. She grew up with validation. And so I realized I had to change my system. Okay? So I could be reverent to Christ and have some headship in my relationship with my wife, to love her the way Christ loved me, gave himself for me. So I always want you to dive deep into that passage. Okay, number one. These are the best steps I've accumulated over the years, and I want to pass them on to you. Recognize that your families have differences. Be curious about what it was like for your spouse growing up. So be honest about the good, bad, and the ugly in your own family of origin. So stay open, though. It's not a bash fest. It's just about, hey, I think this is how it happened for me, and this is how I've learned. Hey, what about you? So curiosity is going to be really important. Be curious and sensitive about how your feelings have been influenced by your families, your views, your desires. And then don't do the, honey, don't worry about it, that's just how she is. Don't do that part. I would rather you investigate and celebrate what's really happening so the two of you can come up with the decision that's best for you in that moment. So really think about not minimizing how you've been impacted or how important those connections are. And guys, I want to just flash forward. I'll probably talk about this a little bit later, but I adjusted on how I was going to care for my wife, and the two of us were going to start our own family. I adjusted over the years. I learned to say no to my family. I learned to get in there a little bit more. And so Mom used to call and say, hey, come over for pasta on Friday. And my mom made the best sauce because it was the family, family recipe. By the way, she never taught my wife how to make the family sauce. She refused. Oh, it's just a pinch here, it's a pinch there. My grandparents, great-grandparents' pasta sauce recipe died with my mother. She never shared it with anyone. That's sad. Now, I don't know why. I don't know, my mom, that was her claim to fame or something, and she wouldn't take it with her. And then she had an early onset dementia. She died in 2012. So we had about 12 years there where she was just declining rapidly. So some things got lost. It was sad. But my point is that my mom would call early when we were married, hey, come over for Friday. Come over Friday, we'll have pasta, it'd be great. And I go, oh, Mom, that sounds good. Okay, well, all right, thanks. And then I go in the back room and go, hey, honey, what do you think about going over to Mom and Dad's for pasta on Friday? And then what did Julie say? Nah, I don't want to. We were over there last week. I don't want to go back over there. And then what would I do? Wait a minute. I already kind of said yes. I don't want anybody to hate me. Well, come on, honey. She makes the best sauce, and I haven't had pasta in a long time. And come on, it'll be great. We'll just go a couple hours. It'll be fine. So I'd start trying to manipulate her to get what I wanted. And then I'd go, well, it's my family. I mean, come on. Why can't my wife lighten up a little bit? It's good sauce. We should just go. And I'd rationalize all that. And it wasn't very safe for her. So what I've learned to do, and what I did learn to do, is go, hey, Mom, thanks for the invite. Julie and I will talk about it, and one of us will call you back. You're going to have to start setting boundaries with your families to serve each other first. Okay? So just keep thinking through that. Agree to always be honoring about each other's family members. You can be truthful, but really work to be honoring. Don't demean the people that your spouse loves. My wife didn't know how I could love my mom or my dad when they were hurtful, but she didn't know all of the nuances. We used to say dishonoring things about each other's families. Just remember that even if you don't understand it, it's insulting and hurtful to openly dishonor something or someone that your spouse really loves. So if my wife had a 1986 Dodge Daytona that she really loved, I didn't kick the door and go, this stupid thing. I wanted to. But it was her car. She had an attachment to her first car. Okay? So just be mindful of caring for each other and how you deal with each other's families. Go to number 6. Always agree to choose each other in your marriage above your relationships with your families. You just have to, guys. You formulate boundaries that create a win-win for you two, even in dealing with your families. And I'll talk more about that later on this morning. So, the win-win for your families. 7, begin formulating your new traditions for your new family. And be willing to face some judgment or disappointment from your families of origin, okay? Recognize that change can be a great way to connect with and rely on each other. So that builds safety and care and commitment. Julie and I decided when we were close to being first married that we love Chinese food and we're going to go eat Chinese on Christmas Eve. That's going to be our thing. So we ended up at a Chinese restaurant like that movie and one Christmas Eve, and we just loved it. Hardly anybody was there, and we were like, hey, this is awesome. And so what we started doing is actually inviting my family who lived in town to Christmas Eve dinner at the Chinese restaurant. They could come or they could decline, totally up to them. But that's where we were going to be. And when they started showing up, we actually had a lot of fun because Julie and I were together and we were tight on what we were doing. And so you can start your own new traditions. Really important. Have fun with it. And if it doesn't work out great, then you retool and try it again the next holiday, okay? But usually holidays, birthdays, weddings, funerals, babies, people lose their minds around those things. And so be as clear as you can with each other about your expectations, and then really try to come up with a win-win. Number 8, I think, is really important. Protect each other. Don't share personal things or derogatory things about your spouse with your families. Sometimes people don't know what to do. There's a saying that I made up. Sometimes blood is thicker than marriage, and it's a shame that people operate that way. I want you to choose each other, and know that if you have something to say to your dad about your wife, who is your dad going to choose really at heart? He's probably going to choose you, and that will automatically create a conflict or a rift between the two of you. So really think about sharing with each other and not sharing negative things about each other with anyone else, unless you have permission from each other. So make sure that your spouse's name is safe with you, okay? Make sure you're safe with each other. That's just really imperative. Any questions? We're going to take a break and then get on to the next thing, but any questions or ideas about family of origin things? I know it's a big topic and it's hard to cover, but the core of it, I think, is to leave and cleave, submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. No matter what you've done in the past, no matter what your families are expecting, this is about your union. This is about you two. This is about your one flesh relationship. Anything? Anyone? Yeah, Dave?
This experience shows me that sharing, there's like a common thread through that, which is when we can all be very independent,
Yeah.
let alone the family of origin influences. So any decision, no matter how small and insignificant it may be, to discuss it openly, and quite often the response may not be the one you want, but to just in Christ work through that. You get such great fruit from it, because at the very least there's a mutual respect that he cared to talk about it with me.
Yeah, you bet, you bet. So being open enough to come to each other and go, hey, I don't know why this is a big deal to me, but it is. Hey, this is what's going on for me. This is what I think I might want. And then to be safe with each other, go, okay, thanks for telling me. But I think what a lot of people do is they go, well, I can't tell her this. She's just going to be mad because she hates my mom. Or I can't tell him this because I know he wants to go out with his brother, but I'm scared because his brother's a reprobate. We don't share those kinds of things because we're worried about the reaction. But I'm telling you, you've got to get in there and keep a short account early on. And if it can be very honoring, I think what I share with you in the next session will help you do that more and more, to really be open with each other. So that's a great point. Yeah.
The way I think of it is an identity shift. You have to be I think you should be willing to embrace a new identity when you get married. Because if you try to hold on to the old identity of whatever you were before, it's going to magnify the conflict or the potential conflicts.
Yeah, you bet. So even as an identity, maybe not fully your whole identity is your new married, you're more than just the spouse, but that part is very important. So to shift is really, really important, you bet. So to identify with each other and identify as your family first is really, really important. You got it. So, yeah.
Isn't it best to consider, once married, that the communication style is between one child and two adults, a married couple, as opposed to me going to my daughter and then I going to my wife, trying it back and forth, that type of thing, but to join in conference together.
Yeah, so that's the one flesh idea where there's no other triangle. It's just the two of you. Is that what you mean?
And without me trying to have a relationship with speaking to one and then speaking to another
Right, yeah, you bet. So as an adult, adult to adult, you're no longer the child from your family, you're no longer the children from your families, you're now adults with each other, I think is what you're saying, yeah. Yeah, very important, you bet. Adult to adult.
John, what do you think?
Yeah, let's do a break.
Until 1:45, and
Quarter-two.
during that time, you'll have break?
Yes.
All right. You don't want to like
All right. All right. Hopefully, we've had some good discussion. All right, I want to reiterate this part, that my folks are really great. They're unique in a way to other people. They were unique to my wife, but not to me. I was used to it, but I think that all of us have been impacted by important people in our lives. And so usually it's a mixed bag, isn't it? Like, you know, there's some great stuff. I have great memories, and there have been great times where there was lots of love and lots of support. And I never felt like I was without my pack, my group. I knew I was loved. And some of us, it is mixed, because there were times where we can remember that didn't really seem like they were going our way, and then other times where we were impacted more positively. So I think for most everybody it is mixed. And so I do think, though, when we're really young, we rely on our guardians to tell us good stuff about us. And sometimes it's hard to hear the good stuff. We don't hear it, or we miss it. We code things in a certain way, and it really can impact our hearts. And so for this session, what I want to try to do is help create a framework for you to work with the most important thing you have. And I think the most important thing you have is your heart. What happens to you if your heart stops? Duh, right? Okay. So, is your heart important? You bet. So it's important physically, but what I want to share with you in this session is, what do we do with it emotionally? What have we done with it? How has it been impacted? And so I want to work through the outline with you a little bit and see if we can't create a framework that really works for you as an individual and works for you and your family. So let's just kind of work through it a little bit, and then we'll really get in the meat of it. And for those of you who like filling out stuff, you know, I have some open spaces there and some lines. So let's fill in a few things, and then we'll go. I love this quote: emotions are celebrated and repressed, analyzed, medicated, adored and ignored, but rarely, if ever, are they honored. I don't know who Carla McLaren is, but I like that quote. Think about James 4:1. What causes quarrels and fights among you? Is it not this, that your passions are at war within you? Another translation says, what causes quarrels and fights among you? Don't you know that it comes from the desires within? Bless you. What do you think you've always wanted? This is the group participation part. What have you always wanted to know about you? Give me some ideas. Think about feelings. What kind of message do you think you always just naturally wanted for yourself, about yourself?
You understood
Understood?
that you matter.
You matter, you're important.
Be accepted.
Accepted, now we're cooking.
Love.
Loved. Safe. Special, right? Valued.
Unique.
Validated, unique, special, yeah. Okay? So start thinking about some feelings. Where do feelings happen? Do you think they happen in your head or in your heart? I've heard all kinds of stories over the years. Think about some of the scriptures. Think about the pictures in Scripture. Open the eyes of my heart, Lord. Does your heart have eyes? I mean, scientifically, we know that it doesn't, but think about how much, I want to kind of quicken you to this idea, that the word heart is in Scripture about 800 or more times, depending on your translation. That's a lot. I would say that's a pretty important thing. It's an important item. And so when we start thinking about emotions, I want you to think about that you have them. Everybody has them. And in your relationships, your heart, I think, is the thing that's impacted most. And I think your heart and what happens in there will impact your relationship the most, how you deal with what happens in there. And so I want to take you through this a little bit. So I think that in Scripture, there's it's kind of obscure. It's in Proverbs, and it depends on the translation, but one translation says that as a man or as one thinks in his heart, so is he. Do you think in your heart? Well, it's weird, huh? There's a really tight connection between how you think and how you feel. If we were in a dark alley, tell me your name?
Kyle.
Kyle. So if we were in a dark alley, Kyle, and I thought, we knew each other, and we were in a dark alley, and you go, "Hey, John, what's going on?" If I say to myself, "That's Kyle, and he loves me," how would I feel?
Probably excited.
Yeah, I would feel, would I feel negative or would I feel positive? Okay, if I say to myself, "Ooh, I don't know who that guy is, he's pointing something at me," then how do I feel? Yeah, negative, right? So how much does my mind deal with my heart? A lot. My wife could be very sensitive about something, and I can say, "Oh, don't worry about it." So I think we deal with our feelings in ways that are very cognitive and then very emotional. And those two sometimes get intertwined, and they're very quick. So I don't really know where an emotion starts. I just know where it tends to reside, and I think it's in my heart. It seems like Scripture really supports that. So tell me this, where do you think your emotions come from? Do you remember when you were in diapers? Do you remember what happened? Do you remember when you climbed on the chair in the kitchen and reached up to the counter and grabbed the cookies off the counter? Do you remember what happened? What if you're in diapers and you reach up there and you grab the cookie off the counter and your mom comes in and goes, "Now, Kyle, what is wrong with you?" Whap! Give me that cookie back. Go. What do you feel? What's the message? Now, you may blow it off because, whatever, this happens every day, no big deal. You may not. You may not. You may take it like, "Oh, I had no control over that one, and I got nailed, So you may feel controlled or helpless. Something happens. I think things happen to us before we can even understand what it is. And we have zero control over it. Think about how you code your experiences. You may see something a certain way that may really impact your heart, or you may not. But, for that one thing, but you have had things in your life that you code. And I think it's impacted in your heart. So the question that I have is, how do you tend to judge your emotions now as an adult? Do you judge them as good? I meet with guys all the time going, "I'm not a very touchy-feely person, and I don't really have it. I'm not very emotional." Is that true? What do you think? I think something still happens in there for that guy, don't you? Okay? Whether he wants to embrace it or not, that's an issue. And so, I think that we do tend to judge feelings. My wife used to come to me when we were first married, and she'd go, "Hey, John, I'm really worried about how much money we have in the checking account." And I go, "Honey, don't worry about it. I'm making money this week. Everything's great." And she'd go, "Okay, whatever." She'd walk away. And then I go, "What? What's the problem?" She'd go, "Nothing. You don't get it." And then I go, "What? You were talking about the money. I'm solving the money. Therefore, you should be happy." And she's not happy. So if she's not happy, how do I feel? Lots of things. Lots of things. But the problem is, when I was growing up, I wasn't taught to identify what that's called. I was taught to fix it. I was taught to move on. I was taught you don't cry, you don't spend any time on that, you rub dirt on it and you move on. And so, I think most of us, we don't want to celebrate or honor a feeling. We judge it as either good or right or positive or negative. Okay, I want to teach you a new thing, and I want to have you use it in your relationship. Okay, so we're going to really pound through some of this. Okay, so what do you think we all try to feel? What would we call that? We try to feel happy, right? So we try to feel positive, something positive. What do we try to avoid? Something negative. So in some theory, human theory, we seek what? Pleasure. We try to avoid pain. Okay? So it's all about comfort. So if I see feeling inadequate as really bad, what do I do with it? Suppress it. Avoid it. But what if I was feeling inadequate from the time I was in diapers? Does that make sense? I may have had something etched on my heart that I had no control over. I may have experienced a trauma. I may have been told certain things. I may have coded things a certain way that impacted me very deeply. Okay? So just for openers, here's my idea about dealing with feelings, and then let's get into some of the details about what really happens. Okay, so on those fill-ins down there, a new way to look at emotions. So here's what I want to challenge. Number one, if feelings or emotions, if we could see them as information, circle that information right there. This is going to be the key to this whole session. So see where it says not and then all those lines? Here's how I filled it in. Emotions are not good or bad or right or wrong. Good, bad, or right or wrong. Keep going. Just important information about me. Emotions happen in the most important place. My heart. My heart is the most important gift God's given me. Now, I know I'm a dude, okay? I lift weights. I played baseball in college, played football growing up. I've had the same hairstyle for decades. Less hair to style, but my underwear comes like 4 to a pack for $9, you know? It's great being a guy. I can urinate anywhere I want. I don't get cramps. Chocolate's just a snack. When I get married, my name stays put. I mean, there are lots of great things about being a guy, okay? You with me? I know that didn't go over, sorry. But I realize that as a guy, even though I'm tough and I have a dirt bike and, you know, all that, I have a heart. And I realized at some point in my life as an adult that I had a lot going on in there. And I could still be a rough and tumble guy, but in my marriage, I needed to figure out what was happening in my most important place and where it came from. Okay, this is going to be a silly question, but raise your hand if you'd ever had any feelings before you met your fiance. Okay. So, here's what I'm proposing. That there's a lot of good information happening inside of you that started happening way before you met each other. Do you think that stuff will continue after having known each other and get married? It will continue. Wherever you go, there you are. Okay? So, if your feelings are not good, bad, right, or wrong, and they're important information, and they happen in your most important place, what should we do with them? So go to number 2 there. What happens, I think, to our feelings is that we start seeing feelings as very personal messages about ourselves. I have seen my feelings as messages about me. Let's just finish this and I'll share more about that. So these can be seen negatively, and I can see feelings as judgment instead of good information. I promise I'll make this all sound better here as we go. feelings can be seen as messages about me, and they can also be seen negatively. I can see feelings as judgment instead of good information. Because of this, I have a hard time separating my feelings, my messages, from my identity, from who I am. Okay, think about it this way. I brought a little friend with me. Yeah, there he is. All right, some of the mentor couples are used to this.
I missed you.
Yeah. All right, now I have a football. I think I know where my football is now. It's a little fuzzy football. I've brought that a few times, but somehow people like the teddy bear. So, okay. So think about my precious little heart. All right. So, all right, I'm 13 years old. We moved from Chicago when I was 7, 1973. I found sports young. My brothers were not sports people. Steve was in the band. Tom was getting in trouble. I liked sports. Okay, my brother Tom is 99% scar tissue. My oldest brother Steve, leave Steve alone, he's thinking, okay? So in our family, Steve was the smart one, Tom was the troublemaker, and I was the cute kid that could throw a ball, okay? I was the jock, and I was going to bring fame and fortune to my family. So I'm 13, I get selected for the district all-star team, okay? At the time, we had moved to North Scottsdale. I was in a new league, and then I got recruited to play on this 13-year-old team. If any of you played Little League before, you know that 13 is the time where you get to compete for the Little League World Series if you really perform well. And so our team from North Scottsdale was really good. And so all-star team, we'd won a few games. Best night of my life. I'm pitching a no-hitter through 6. Okay, I remember where I was. We win the game, we start traveling. It's pretty cool time in my life. So I'm throwing a no-hitter through 6. I'm sitting in the dugout on the bench before going back out for the 7th. We played 7 innings back then. My little mom comes up to the dugout. She goes, "John, what are you doing?" I go, "Mom, throwing a no-no. I'm in the zone. I'm nailing it tonight. I'm cool, you know." And I go, I'm just getting ready to go back out there. And she gets down in my face and she goes, "Why did you walk that kid? Why do you do this stuff to me?" Now, any of you baseball fans? I go, "Mom, I can walk a kid. He didn't hit the ball. He didn't score. I still have a no-hitter going. Leave me alone. I got to go back out there." So she gets down lower and she says, "I can't believe we're doing this." She sticks her fingers to the chain link fence and says, "Give me your bubble gum. I can't believe we're doing this again. It's throwing you off balance. What's your problem?" Well, what do you do at 13? I folded my arms and I smashed her hand in the fence and I said, "Ugh, as soon as I'm able, I'm out of here. This stinks." Well, I'm 13. Where am I going to go? When you're 13, what do you say to yourself in that position, that moment? What did you say when you were met with criticism? How did it feel inside? Did you say to yourself, this is interesting? I don't care about what's going on right now. I just know my heart's been hurt. Okay, Lord, what's that called? Hey, what's going on with my mom? You know what? She's got a lot of problems, and it's her deal, and I don't know why this is so important to her, but I'm cool. I'm just doing my thing. Do you say to yourself that at 13? No. What does it feel inside? What would I tell myself in that moment? Who would I make it about? Man, she's nuts. I don't know. What do you do next? Some people, what do? Shut down. What do other people do? Fight, right? So I think when we have feelings, we either flee, suppress them, get away, or we suppress them and we fight. We react. Fight or flight, you got it. So, think about it this way. When my mom says that to me, if I could, in that moment, say what I was feeling, what do you think we would call it? I know you have a feelings list there, but I also did another one for you in the packet. But what would you call it in that moment? What happened in my heart, do you think? What would that be called? See, it's even hard to find as adults, isn't it? You don't have a great emotional vocabulary. You weren't taught to name your feelings, were you? You were taught to protect this thing, your heart. And what did you do with it? You suppressed it, didn't you? You don't want to deal with a negative feeling, because what does that mean about you? See, if I were to really embrace my heart right there, what would I find? What did I think she told me about me? Inadequate, not good enough, like a failure, controlled, judged, misperceived. That's a big one for me. Okay? I think a lot of stuff happens in here. You go to school and somebody makes fun of your shoes, what's the feeling?
Insecure.
Your mom says something to you on your first date that your date's mother heard at the end of the driveway. What do you feel? Controlled, helpless, judged. I had lots of feelings happening in my heart. But when I was a kid, I didn't know what to call them. I thought that I had to fight for myself. I thought that I had to get independent. I thought that I had to prove myself because I didn't want to feel what I was feeling. So think about some of your emotions. Think about some common messages etched on your heart. There's a good quote, John Eldridge, see it there in the middle? So I wrote a little bit about life experiences, but these buttons, these feelings may have been etched on your heart. They might still be there year after year, word after word. Our life scripts are etched layer by layer. Nearly imperceptibly, our self-images are created, and in time, we join in. I thought I was the inadequate one. I thought I could only throw balls and hit balls and shoot balls and run and play, and that's how I was going to be valid. We join in, we help out. I can't do that. I've never been good at that. I always mess that up. So we add our 2 cents to the already big problem. We believe what we are being told by others and what we are telling ourselves. Repetition is a convincing argument. In time, we become what we most believed about ourselves. I believed that I could succeed in one way, but inside, I just knew I was the inadequate failure. They were just messages. I was 7, I was shining my dad's shoes for a quarter. I never got a quarter, so I always missed a spot. I was a quarterback in high school. We lost a lot of games, but I was still the all-city quarterback, right? So I had dropped the pass. I was rolling out. We had a guy in the end zone. We could have won the game. I got hit from behind, lost the ball, couldn't get it back. We lose the game, last game of my high school career. So I go back to the locker room. You know, you got to turn in your pads and all that. About 45 minutes, I sat in the shower with my helmet on, my pads and everything, and just let the shower hit me. And I was just in tears going, my life is over. You know, it's a big deal when you're a teenager, right? I'm never going to get any scholarships, had all this negative stuff going on. So I finally get myself together, and I go out to the parking lot. My car's out there, and my dad's out there with another guy, so nobody else was there. And so I get out there, and my dad comes over, and he puts his arm around me, and he says, you know, John, if you're going to play college ball, you can't have all those turnovers. Thanks, Dad. Yeah, it turned out to be a great night. Flash forward, I'm 40 years old, I'm preaching at a church in North Phoenix. I do my best, I lay it out there. People come up afterward and they go, wow, John, that was awesome. Thanks for sharing. Hey, we never saw that passage that way, and that was really neat. Another guy came up and said, hey, could you be our pastor? You know, it was very honoring. So I walk out in the back between services, and my dad's out there. He goes, wow, John, you sure look nervous up there. Do you think I had the same feeling at 40 that I did at 13?
Yep.
And 23, and 27, and 37? Do crown molding in my house, right? I'm proud of it. Mom and Dad walk in, Dad goes, hey, why'd you do it that way? Now, he's not trying to hurt me, but does that feel familiar? Do you have any of those? You probably do. And do you think in in your relationship with your fiance that some of those feelings are going to get pushed? They will. If they haven't already, they will. I'm probably sure they've already been pushed. So think about what's happened in here in your life. Think about what it's called. Think about, go down there. I listed a few out there, but what are some of your most ingrained emotions? How have you coded things in your life? What's happened in your heart, your most important place? Unloved, disrespected, rejected, failed, controlled, abandoned, inadequate, worthless. Have you ever thought there were this many feelings? What do you call that stuff that happens inside of you? Guys, I want you to think about it this way. When my wife says to me, hey John, I'm really worried about how much money we have in the checking account, what is she doing? Did she share her heart with me? What did she tell me about herself? It's not a trick question. She's worried.
Insecure.
She already gave me the word, didn't she? Hey honey, I'm worried about how much money we have in the checking account. Now when she says she's worried, who is that about? Her. Now, if my wife, who I love dearly, says to me, the guy who's always felt really inadequate, that we don't have enough money in the account, how do I feel? Where did I get that? Way back when. So who is that about? Me. So in that moment, when Julie says, John, I'm really worried about how much money we have in the checking account, who is it about? Who did it become about? So who is it about? Both of us. So the question is, what do I do with it? It's messy, but I want to make it really clear. So when she says she's worried, and I go, honey, that's dumb. Don't worry about it. Who am I taking care of in that moment? Who do I think I'm taking care of in that moment? I think I'm taking care of her, but who am I really trying to appease? Me, because I feel inadequate. She feels worried. So I didn't celebrate her emotion and go, wow, honey, worried? Man, I know how that feels. Tell me more.
Is celebrate really the right word for that?
It kind of is. Yeah. At least honor it. But see, I wasn't good at dealing with feelings. Because here's what I did growing up. I'm going to perform like a monkey on a box on steroids to prove that I'm adequate. And I'll show you. I'll do it right. I'll throw the no-hitter. I'll show you. When I went back out to the mound, I blew the biggest bubble I could blow. And my mom was behind the backstop. Hey, tell me not to chew gum. I'll show you. That's how I dealt with inadequate. I became stubborn. I became aggressive. I became critical. Who does that sound like? Interesting, huh? Because I didn't want to feel what was going on in here. But what are the chances I felt it anyway? See, I could suppress my heart. And when I do, am I looking at information or am I judging it as bad? It's bad. So now, am I connected to my heart or am I disconnected from my heart? All right, so we'll talk about this in a little bit. So I don't want to overwhelm you too much. But everyone has buttons. I know what mine are now. So, so think about, I wrote that down. Everyone has buttons. John Gottman. They're your tender spots, the places where you're most sensitive, the points where you get irritated or hurt or angry and have to react. Buttons are triggered by specific events or circumstances and typically take over and direct your behavior. They also carry a strong emotional charge when they're activated, so that behavior is going to be emotional and extreme. There's nothing rational or considered about a response that comes from a button. It's pure emotion. You'll know you're acting under the influence of a button when you regret what you did or said the moment you cool off. The words just popped out, you turned away and slammed the door behind you. You didn't think about it until afterwards. At the time, it was simply what you had to do. It's reaction to what's potentially always gotten pushed for you in your heart. Now, here's the issue. When you have feelings and you don't know what they're called, you might expect some behavior to soothe what's going on in there, But if you don't really know what's going on in there, how accurate are you going to be? Does it make sense? Hang in here. So, when Julie and I met, I came from a house that was fast-paced, was critical, and I learned how to be self-sufficient. I started working when I was 9. My family didn't have a lot of money. I was very independent. I'd ride my bike to school. I'd get a job on my bike. I would deliver papers. I'd wash windows. I'd mow lawns. I would do whatever it took for me to take care of myself and prove that I was good enough. Some of it was necessity. Other parts of it were reactive. But so I grew up in a critical home. So my feelings were inadequate, not good enough, misperceived, controlled, and judged. Those are big feelings for me. Okay. And when those feelings got pushed, I was aggressive and I was critical. I acted out. I suppressed my heart to try to feel better. Needless to say, when I left home at 17 and I took my heart back, figuratively, right? You take your heart back, you're going to go be your own man. When I looked at it, how do you think I judged it? Ugh. If anybody knew I was like this, he or she would not care about me at all. Ugh. So I learned to suppress my heart. I learned to hide it. I learned to prove that I was awesome, and if you thought I was awesome, and if you told me I was awesome, then great. Then we're pals, right? And so that's how I dealt with my feelings. And if you didn't think I was awesome, then who needs you? I'm out. So when I get to college, I walk on the baseball team, everything's going fine, I'm doing my own thing, I'm working, and then I meet this girl. Had big hair, and she's playing the piano in chapel, and man, I thought she was the best. So I weasel my way in there. Hey, who are you? You know, and do the thing, and she's like, who are you? And so we start a relationship, right? So when I leave home, I want to stop getting what I think I always got. Now, you already heard about my wife's family. So my wife came from validating, accepted, approved, loved, and good enough. My wife always believed she measured up. She was a classical pianist by fourth grade. My wife could read any piece of music, Chopin, Mozart, Beethoven, put it in front of her, she could play it. She loved it growing up, and she was always told that she was awesome and perfect and lovely and brilliant. So when she leaves home, what does she want to keep getting? Same stuff. Making sense? So we meet in school, and she's working hard doing music and education and all that. She's got scholarships, summa cum laude kind of stuff, right? And I'm just kind of figuring out how to do each day. So we get together, I open the door for her, I clean my car, I tell her how pretty she is, I'm doing all this great stuff for her and to her. And what does she think? Awesome guy. Wow. He's validating me, he's accepting me, he's loving me, he's telling me that I'm great. Well, what do you think I was wanting? Same thing. I wanted her to tell me that I was good enough, that I was adequate, that I was perceived accurately that I'm indeed a great guy. She didn't know she was being manipulated. Because when I opened the door, what was my expectation of her? To tell me that I was okay. So when we hit the altar in 1990 at Scottsdale Bible Church, well, before that, she started saying things to me like, wow, you are awesome. And wow, I used to be handsome. You're really good looking. And she'd say, wow, you're really smart and you do your classes really well and you keep your car clean and you tell your parents you love them and man, you are the whole deal. I think I love you. Ooh, that feels good. We're back in action. She's telling me that I'm awesome. Man, I'm telling you what, I loved that. I finally met somebody in my life, and she's pretty, to tell me that I'm cool and I'm awesome. That's the thing I've been searching for. Now, I don't like this, but she seems to like it. So we hit the altar in 1990, and what do you think I do with this? My heart. Think about some of the stuff that's said these days. You are my soul mate. I heard this in a wedding. My wife's niece got married Thanksgiving, Minnesota. Go to that wedding. That was cool. You are my heart. It even rhymed. Till death do we part. It's pretty cool, isn't it? Finally, I found. Tell me your name. Is it Chantel? Chantel. So, okay. So think about it this way, Chantel. If I think you're the most awesome woman I've ever met, and you're going to tell me awesome stuff about me, and I think you're going to care for this, we hit the altar, and I go, okay, here you go, honey. You take care of that thing. Feels so good. And I guess I'll take care of yours. Till death do us part. Sounds pretty neat, doesn't it? I finally met the most beautiful, safest, most encouraging, loving person, totally different than anybody I've ever met. I'm going to choose to spend my life with her and accept her for my whole life. And we're going to exchange that. So now she gets to take care of my heart, and I get to take care of hers. Isn't that sweet? Isn't that awesome? Sounds great. Really good. So, I don't like it, but she likes it. Yeah. She's going to take care of it because she loves me. Finally. Somebody that gets me, loves me, care for me, safe for me, will tell me what I want to hear, what I've always wanted to hear, that I am adequate, good enough, loved, accepted. Bless you. Remember what we talked about before? Special, important, safe.
But it's all about you.
It is about me. You bet. It is all about me. And I'm going to try to make it all about Chantel. Because that's what I'm supposed to do. Sounds good, right? Okay, shift gears real quick. Have you ever accidentally dropped something? Has anything ever just slipped out of your hands? Have you ever tripped over something on the ground? Have you ever gotten your legs stuck in your pants and fallen over? Have you ever, dropped a large cup of coffee, a piece of china, a wine glass, a baby? I've dropped a baby. He's 16. He's got a little twitch, but he's fine. He's fine now. How many of you will ever have dropped something on accident and broken it in your lifetime? How many people in the world will have ever dropped something or broken something on accident? Give me a percentage. 100%. You're right. It's 100%, isn't it? How do you feel when you break something on accident? What do you do to yourself? I can't believe I'm so stupid. And then you want to stop, close your eyes, stop time, reverse it, start over, right? And you open your eyes and it's still broken. So what do you do with the broken mess? What are your options? Try to fix it? Clean it up, hide it?
Hide it under the carpet.
Under the carpet. Ignore it, right? Okay. So let's think about it this way. If I really believe that my heart's the most important gift God's given me, and I don't like it because I've suppressed it, because I see feelings as bad, I don't want to deal with those feelings. And then I find Chantel, and she's awesome, and she's decided that I'm awesome, and she's willing to take care of my heart. What are the chances she's going to drop it? Yeah, think about it that way. I know it sounds figurative, but we do this emotionally. I can put all the pressure on my wife to make sure that she's safe enough to validate moi. Right? Sounds pretty good, because if we make this agreement in marriage, I'll be good to you and you'll be good to me and we'll be happy ever after. But what has always happened in my heart? All of those feelings. So, if I'm doing my best and I come home and then you meet me at the door and you say, honey, I thought you were going to take out the trash can this morning. It's still in there. We missed the truck. And now we got stinky garbage in the garage for the next week. What's your deal? What's going to happen? How do I feel? Same stuff gets pushed. But who am I now saying is responsible for this? Her. Now who am I upset with? You. And then when I say it, and I'm supposed to take care of your heart, how do you feel? Belittled, rejected, inadequate, whatever it may be, demeaned, devalued, betrayed. I wonder if Chantel ever had those feelings before we met. You bet. So think about it this way. If I take my most important gift God's given me and I don't like it, and I give it to her, what are the chances she's going to drop it? 100%. And when she drops it, who's going to be mad? Hurt. Upset. Who's going to be reactive? Me. Because isn't it her responsibility to make sure I feel okay? Is that how you deal with your feelings? Okay, so I'm not calling anybody a fool, but in a way, if you drop my heart, how are you going to feel? And I'm going to go, Chantel, come on, what's up? And then what are you going to try to do? Fix it. Now, what if you do your best and I go, is that all you're going to do? You're still in the doghouse, honey. Until you get this thing right. Because after all, you're my wife and you should be submissive. I'm not saying you guys would do this, but it could get here. And so now, if I take this position with you, because you're not loving me the way I prefer, then what am I doing with your heart? It's on the shelf. I ain't doing nothing with yours until you do something with mine. How does that sound?
Selfish.
It sounds like a stalemate, doesn't it? Think about it this way. If there's a 100% chance she's going to drop my most important thing that God's given me, and she's going to feel horrible about it and feel like a hostage, then who's the fool? Me for giving it? No, fool, but you know what I mean. Me for giving it or her for taking it? Think through it. Both. This is a bad setup. And guys, I do marriage counseling all week. 20, 25 people a week. Sometimes 30. A lot of them are couples. A lot of them are married. A lot of them have trouble in relationships. And this is why. They are not responsible for their own feelings. They want somebody awesome to take care of them for them. And then when they don't, they're really upset. So if Chantel drops my heart, who's in the burner? Who's on the burner? She is, until who feels better? Me. Tell me how that relationship's going to go over the years. All right, so here's where we're going. Can I have my heart back? See how careful she was with it? People don't like it when I do that because they personify the bear a little bit. Yes. Oh, don't do that. He's so cute. Don't do that. Exactly. That's why I use it. What have you done to your own heart in your life? Have you celebrated your emotions? Have you been able to identify what they're called? And if you did, think about your marriage for a second. All right, so we'll get through this, I promise. If you push my buttons and I get aggressive with you, then what happens to you? How do you feel? Hurt. And then what do? Do you get closed, get aggressive, or do you get closed and go away? She gets closed and aggressive. Okay. Is it Kevin, did you say?
Yeah.
Do you get closed and go away and shut down, or do you get closed and aggressive?
I actually sometimes do both.
Do both. We are capable of doing both. So let's think about it this way. You have a heart. I have a heart. When my buttons get pushed, does my heart stay open or does it get closed? Closed. And when it gets closed, what did I tell you I do? I fight. When my wife gets hurt when I fight because she's arguing with me about the trash, then she gets demeaned or feels unloved, then she gets closed and she flees. Now what do we have? Pretty good deal here? We have this. Or, for a while, we have this. Now think about it this way. I get closed, and what do I want? I want this. I want love. But if I'm closed, is that going to compel you to really come close to me? Or is that going to compel you to run away from me? You get it? So who's more important in this situation? Who's most important? Here's where we're going. I'm most important for me. She's most important for her. Whose heart is it that she has? Hers. Whose heart do I have? Mine. Okay? So let's start thinking about when you get activated and your buttons get pushed. Let's figure out what the buttons are. Let's figure out what they're called, and let's figure out what you do with them, what you've always done with them. Are you totally overwhelmed right now? I hope this is making sense the way I'm doing it this time. So think about your buttons, okay? So go to number 4 there. We're gonna kind of just keep pushing on here. When your buttons get pushed, how do you typically respond? Like that first line there. I'm more aggressive in my reactions to my feelings. That means I'm a fighter. A fighter. If you're more aggressive. If you're passive in your reactions to your feelings, then I'll write down, I made up a word. I am a flighter. Flighter. I love making up words. Actually, I'm really blessed. I've gotten to know a lot of great people over my career and in my life. And a good friend of mine, his last name is Smalley, Greg Smalley. His dad was Gary Smalley, died last year, but they're really close with us. Greg's really changed and grown over the years, and we've gotten really close. We were in college and grad school together. We've done a lot of work with this material over the years. He works at Focus on the Family now, and so we've done speaking events together and consulted with some of his books and all that. And so I think, I don't know if we were together, but that word flighter came up. I think he made it up and I made fun of him, and now I use it. So, so you're either a fighter or a flighter, or you're a combination. But usually we have one style that seems to be more prominent. So I learned to fight. All right. So think about how, number 5 there, how do you like or judge your normal way of reacting to your feelings in most circumstances? When you look at yourself, do you like how you have reacted? So if I get upset with my wife and I say something derogatory, how, if I, in my clearer mind, would I judge myself? Positive or negative? Would I say, man, I really love me, I love how I operate, it's so great? Probably not. So in a way, if I act in a way that I don't like because I'm blaming her for how I feel inside, then who am I first compromising? Myself. I'm being a way I don't want to be. And now I'm asking her to love me. Isn't that weird? I don't even love myself. And I'm asking her to love a guy that he doesn't even respect. Is that backwards and disingenuous or what? You ever thought about it this way? When we get reactive and get closed, you're still wanting what you've always wanted. You want love. You want acceptance. You want affection. But are you open for it? No. And now you're really upset at your spouse because you're not getting it. Well, is she going to want to give it to you, or he going to want to give it to you when you're like this? No. What's it going to compel him or her to do? And now we have that. 2 closed hearts. So I say what we've got to start doing is taking care of our own hearts. And the best way to do that is to start recognizing what happens inside of your own. Okay, so let's flip some pages. Go in your deal. Keep going and go to that list. There should be a big chart, a big list. Okay, yeah, that first list. Does it say feelings and buttons on the top? Fears, feelings, buttons. Can I borrow this?
Yeah.
It's this one here. Core fears, core feelings. Got that one? All right. What I want you to do is just take a few minutes. If you're sharing, I think you're sharing them. So put your initials, if you have the same initials, do a symbol or whatever. I want you to start working through this list of feelings. Now the description there is a judgment, basically. It's a thought. Well, my spouse doesn't care about what I think, and therefore I feel invalidated. So those are just kind of judgments that are written out there. So don't concentrate so much on that, what the feeling sounds like. Just go through and think about, I think everybody has 4 or 5, at least 3 pretty strong feelings, buttons that have been etched in there. Some people have more. If you have 20, that's okay. Okay? Go through the list and just think about some feelings that seem to be quick for you. Like when Seth was talking to me about his mom a little bit. She's a passionate Jewish lady, and she's got opinions and wants to save some money and do some great stuff, and she can tend to push his buttons or push Nikki's buttons maybe. So think about what is quick for you in your life with your family of origin. Think about your upbringing a little bit. Think about your relationship with your fiance, your spouse. And just think about what tends to get pushed for you, what's yours, what's quick for you. Okay? Yeah.
So with the fighter and flighter thing,
Yeah.
I think I would relate to your family, and I think Brian probably relates to your wife's. But
Okay.
I've noticed with us, is it very common to like move more toward, like I think my family's more of a fighter family, and I've always been like that.
Yeah.
But I can tell since he's more of a flighter, I'm starting to like mold. to be
Yeah,
a
you
fighter. Is
influence
that
each
pretty
other.
common?
Yeah, did everybody hear the question? You can definitely be impacted by each other, okay? So what we're going to talk about is a way for both of you to address your feelings as information, and then both of you to be responsible for those feelings, and then do really good self-care, and then show up in a way that's good for both of you. And that may be a little less of a fighter and a little less of a flighter. You're going to match styles a little more naturally if you're willing to embrace your own heart. Yeah. So we're not talking about controlling each other. We're talking about taking care of yourself and then showing up open and safe. You're right, though. We do impact each other. I'm much more mellow now than I used to be. Yeah. It's a good thing because it works for me and it works for our relationship. Okay. So go through that list a little bit and just mark a couple of things that seem to be quick feelings for you. Kevin, can I raise somebody to really know that we have these feelings because our feelings have become our identities. So for a long time, I thought I was the inadequate kid. All I was good for was working hard and being a good athlete. These identity things came in for me. And I met Jesus when I was 16, and he really did change my life, change my perspective on life. But I was still pretty fleshly, and I was still very hurt. I didn't realize it. And so it wasn't until we were probably 3 years into our relationship, into our marriage, and we had dated for 2 and we're engaged for 1. We've known each other since 1987. It wasn't until about 3.5 years into marriage that I realized, wait a minute, I have made my wife responsible for me and my feelings. And she's about ready to tell me to hit the road. We were not close. I was not loving her. I wanted her to love me before I would budge. And I thought I was loving her because I was busy, you know? And we missed each other all the time. And so I want to offer a good example that helps. All right, let's do it this way. When I would operate and when Julie would be critical of me, I would assume she's being critical of me. It would push one of these buttons for me. Now remember, I came into this naturally, right? I was rigged this way. So, when I would feel one of these or more, I would react, and I would react fast. Boom. And when I showed up this way, I was critical, defensive, I would debate, I would blame, I would minimize. Let me put that on there. I would minimize. I'd rationalize. Well, honey, come on. It's just garbage. So what if it stinks? It's not in the house. You know, and you know what? I told you I would take care of it. I didn't tell you that I would do it. That's a difference. And then, how would she feel when I was, being like this? What would happen with her? How would she feel? She would feel belittled. She would feel invalidated, like her idea was bad. And then when she felt these things, what do you think she did? When you read those words, does it look like she's a fighter or a flighter? Yeah, mostly flight. When I was young, I was first doing my first job, we were actually living in the woods in Branson, Missouri for my second big job out of grad school. And I was working in a residential treatment facility for adolescents. And then we also had a discipleship program. And so one of the people that I supervised, one of the leaders in the ministry, was working with some of the kids. Well, she was dealing a lot with depression and her own stuff, and back then, before cell phones, you know, we all had landlines, and somehow she got my phone number at home. And Julie and I were living in this cruddy little 2-bedroom townhouse in the mid. Anybody country music fan? Anybody know Mel Tillis?
Yeah.
Okay, remember that name? Remember he had his daughters, they were called the Stutterettes, so he would sing and then they'd back him up. Well, they had a country music theater in Branson, Missouri, and it was the Mel Tillis Theater. Anyway, one of his daughters lived next to us, and she was the one that was tone deaf. She couldn't sing. But she lived right next to us in our townhome. Anyway, that's another story. I told you, rabbit trail. Anyway, so we're living next to Mel Tillis' daughter, and the phone rings. It's like 10:30. We had just gone up to the bedroom to go to sleep, and we had a long day the next day, and we're getting ready for bed, and basically one of those deals. She sat on her side of the bed and laid down. I sat on my side and was starting to lay down. The phone rings. So I get up and I pick up the phone and I go, hello? And it's this young woman who was struggling. She found my number. I was part of the discipleship team, and she was telling me that she wanted to kill herself. And I go, okay, well, you know, that's not the best idea, you know. So I'm young, you know, I'm just trying to talk her off the ledge, and I'm trying to help, I'm trying to be sweet, and trying to make her promise me she's not going to hurt herself. Do I need to call somebody, or, you know. So I'm working through this whole thing, and I'm sitting on the edge of the bed, and it's nighttime, and I kind of patched her back up, and she said she'd see me in the morning, and then we'd bring somebody else in, and she was going to be fine, and she was going to go. She walked, I kind of walked her through. She went into another house and was with somebody else, so she was safe. And then we set up a meeting for the next morning. So it took like 20-something minutes, half hour probably. So I hang up the phone, and I go, ugh. So I lay back in the bed, and Julie's still in the bed. And it's just quiet. I mean, we're in the middle of nowhere. And then Mel Tillis' daughter was out at the theater, I think, so we couldn't hear them. And so it was dead silent, and then from the darkness I hear, and then I just kind of, and then I hear this, so I sit up and I go, what? And she goes, what did she say? Nothing. I mean, we're young 20s, right? We're trying to figure this out. Well, little, 28 probably. And I go, what? And she goes, you should just know. I go, what am I supposed to know? And then it's on, right? She goes, I can't believe that she would call late at night. This is our private time. And why can't you set boundaries? And then what do? What? She's going to kill herself. I didn't give out my number. I don't know how she found me. I don't know if she's in love with me. I don't know any of that stuff. Why do you always have an answer for everything? Why can't you just take... Right? So I go, She gets up and she goes, yeah, and walks out. And so I get up and I go, where are you going? So we had 2 bedrooms up top. She walks into the other bedroom, and I'm standing there at the door, and I go, I am not chasing her again. So I'm like in my boxer shorts, right? So I go on, I lay in the bed, and I go, oh, Lord. I lay down, I fall down on the bed, face down, and I go, Lord, I don't know what's going on. We got to figure this out, and it's so late. And what do I do? Fall asleep. She's in the other room, because she's a flighter. She shuts down. She goes in the other room. She sits in the corner on the floor in the dark. Ugly shag carpet, really yucky place. I'm dead away sleeping on the floor. I am awakened by what I think is a gunshot to my leg. So I'm laying there, bare legs. I have these little tiny calves. She comes in and she's mad. It's an hour later. She comes in an hour later and she goes, eh, and slaps me right on the back of my calf. Wham! Ah! I shoot up. I'm on the bed going, what happened? Who shot me? Ow! Ow! I I look at her like I'm about ready to just, so I jump off the bed, and she goes, uh-oh. And then she runs back into the other room and goes into the closet. And I'm standing over her going, she goes, don't hit me. First time anything like that had ever happened. That was not a good night. It was really the only time we'd ever let it escalate to that point. And I'm thinking, man, what are we doing? Somehow we can't get through this. And she hit me, you know. So we get back over this. And I didn't mean it. And then I'm standing there like half asleep, half awake, going, what are we gonna do? And we figured out that we gotta stop this. The problem is that I made her responsible for this, and she made me responsible for this. Now, whether or not I handled that phone call right, we could work that out. I could have said, hey, you know what, I can't talk to you now. Are you with anybody? Hey, I'll see you tomorrow. I'll call the police. I'm getting off the phone. I'm going to call the police and have them sent to you. Hey, I'm at home. Or I could have not even picked up the phone. We could have had that agreement, but we didn't. We didn't have all that set up because I was being the way I thought I needed to be, and she was being the way she thought she needed to be. Well, the truth is, she never felt safe with me because she always got this guy. I would react. And I didn't feel safe with her because I always thought she was holding out on me. And I thought, okay, if you really love me, you'll tell me all of these things, the opposite of these things. You'll tell me I'm adequate. You'll tell me I'm good enough. You'll tell me that I'm awesome. You will tell me that I'm the best, and I'll tell you that you're the best, and we'll be lovey-dovey. But the problem is, she wanted that so bad from me, she didn't give it to herself. And I wanted that so bad from her, I didn't give it to myself. All right, so I want you to find a place to write this down, okay? And I want you to just think about these things. And then right after this, what I want you to do, I want you to look at the reactions after this, okay? So, number one, this is going to be the key to your marriage. And this is what I share with everybody that I do counseling with. This is what me and my wife work on every day, okay? This will be the framework that makes you have a great marriage. And here's how it looks. Number one, write this down, personal responsibility. Personal responsibility. Number two is self-care. 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 Number three, caring for my spouse. And number four is caring for my marriage. I know this is hard and fast hitting, but guys, I'm telling you, when Julie and I worked out, this is called the reactive cycle. When we've worked out a reactive cycle, we can do anything. But it's founded on what I just spent 45 minutes sharing with you. Your heart is your heart. Your emotions are your emotions. Let's name them. Let's find them. And then let's get responsible for them. Whose feelings are these?
Yours.
Whose are these? Okay. So whose reactions are these? Okay. This is personal responsibility. This has nothing to do with my wife. Nothing. Now, we're capable of pushing each other's buttons because we love each other, we live together, we're married, right? But at the core, this stuff happened in my heart way before I met her. And this stuff happened in her heart way before she met me. Now, when you're in close quarters and you're committed to each other, you may have already done this, but you push each other's buttons. You just do. The question is, what are you going to do with it? And what I want you to do with it, I want you to get responsible in your own heart for your own stuff. And I want you to do really good self-care when your buttons get activated, and it looks like this. I'm learning that I don't love this guy and my wife doesn't feel safe with this guy. This guy is closed. This guy is aggressive, and this guy is critical, and he wants his way. It's not very honoring to me, and it's not very honoring to the Lord, and it's not very honoring to my wife. This is true about me. This is my mom and dad and my brothers. This is me. Okay, let me rephrase that. This is not me. This is how I react to what I always thought was me. Does that make sense? This is not me. These are just my feelings. And I can embrace them and see them as good information, which makes me important, which makes me viable, because I'm taking care of my own heart. Chantel does not have to take care of my heart. Make sense? So, I'm learning to lay tracks down between my emotions and my reactions. See, what most couples do is go, well, why are you being such a jerk? And then, well, why are you being a jerk? Well, I'll stop being a jerk if you stop being a jerk. Well, I'll start being more loving if you start being more communicative. Now what do we have? Stalemate. We have blame. What happened in the Garden of Eden? What did Eve do? Blame the snake. What did Adam do? Blame the woman. They were both together. Go back and read that. He was with her when she ate the fruit. Go back through that. All right, so think about this. So when I react and it pushes her buttons, and she reacts and pushes my buttons, how many rounds of this do you think we can have in about a minute?
Indianapolis 500.
You got it. We're in it. So I've got to take care of me. She's got to take care of her. Now, I put this, if you notice that sheet in there right before the list, I put a reactive cycle in there for you, okay? So what I want you guys to do in this time, I want you to write your feelings in there. Pick your 3 most strongest feelings, if you haven't already. Some of you might have even done it. And then I want you to go to that reactions list. Yeah, you guys are on it. So the reactions list, figure out what your core reactions are too. What do you normally do? And is it fighting or is it flighting? And what we've got to do in your relationship is stop this one. This has to stop. And then here's number 3, guys. Number 3 is we're going to care for each other this way. I'm going to tell her what's going on in my heart, and she's going to care for me. And then she's going to tell me what's going on in her heart, and I'm going to care for her. So it goes like this. Hey, honey, right now I'm feeling really inadequate. I don't really know what to do, but I know I don't want to be like this. And then she could go, wow, honey, inadequate. Man, I can imagine how that feels. I know how that feels. I felt that way too. And the thought of you feeling that way right now makes me really sad. I don't really know what to do. It's okay, honey. It's my feeling. I'm good. I just have some feeling. Thanks for caring. And then she'd go, well, I feel really helpless. Well, I know it's helpless. See, I know people don't talk like this, but what if you did?
Makes me want to cry.
I know. Cry. Everybody has a heart, and everybody has stuff going on in there. But what if you two were the safest for each other? On my worst day, I can tell my wife that I feel like an abject failure. And she will care for me, but she will not carry me, because whose heart is this? Mine. I take care of it. And if she's going to be nice to it, that's awesome. Bonus. And this is what we follow. I'm good to me, I'm good to her, I'm good to the marriage. She's good to me, good to her, good to me, good to the marriage. A win-win. Sound all right? All right, so I know we're running out of time, so here's what I'd like to do. I would like you to at least in your table time coming up, fill out your reactive cycle, both of you. And then I want you to talk about it a little bit with each other. And then table discussion after that with your mentor couples. And then what I want you to do is look at that cheat sheet on the back, that 1 through 7 about dealing with your feelings with your spouse. That synopsis is the best synopsis I have for you on the process that I'm talking about today. Do not give your heart away. Take it back. Take it back from your mom. Take it back from your dad. Take it back from the guy or the girl that hurt you. Take it back from each other. Start over. Your feelings are good information. You get to embrace them, and you get to share your heart with each other. But here's the goal. Open to open. Now, guys, one more thing before I shut up. If my heart is the most important thing God's given me, and I have all these emotions, I want you to keep working with the scriptures. I want you to go to Jesus and figure out that the triune God, God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit, that if I am in Christ and Christ is in me, where does the Spirit reside? In my heart. Well, what's also in my heart? So what does God say about me? Does he say I'm a failure? Does he say that I'm inadequate? That I'm just junk? What do my feelings say about me? So who am I going to trust more? My feelings or the God of the universe who's in me? See, I want you to read Ephesians, that I am seated with Christ in the heavenlies because he's in me and I'm in him. He didn't abandon me. He didn't reject me. He didn't tell me I was a failure. While I was a sinner, Christ died for me. And because of my relationship with him, he fills me. So does that make my heart okay or not okay? It makes it okay. And because it's okay, I can face my feelings. That's where they reside. So do my feelings tell me who I am, or do my feelings just tell me they're my feelings? See, I want you to be able to work with it that way. I'm alive in Christ. I'm free in Christ. I'm filled by him. I'm complete. I'm whole. And the way I see myself is not inadequate. So if I don't see myself as inadequate, how do you think I see my wife? Perfect, loved, appreciated, special. And what do you think I tell her every day?
I'm in love with you.
I tell her about who I am, and I tell her about who I think she is, and she's the best. No matter how she feels, no matter how she acts. I'm a child of God. So is she. And our hearts are very important. And they have a lot of things in there. But they don't tell us who we are. He does. I'm not the inadequate one. It's awesome. So on days when I feel inadequate, what is it? It's just a feeling. And I'm going to stay safe, and I'm going to stay open, and I'm going to take care of myself. I'm going to love my neighbor as myself. Self-care is Matthew 22:37, the great commandment. That's how I remember it. Love God with all your heart, mind, strength, and soul. Love your neighbor as yourself. What do you do to yourself? Ladies, do you look in the mirror and go, I stink. I can't believe I look like this. I can't believe he would even love me. I stink. What's my problem? Don't do that to yourself. Don't do that to him. He chose you. And you're going to beat yourself up? You're calling him an idiot by doing that to yourself. He didn't go out and find some lemon to marry. He chose you because he thinks you're the best. Tell that to yourself. Do better self-care. Don't do that to yourself. I don't tell myself I'm a failure anymore. It's just not true. That's not what God tells me. Even if my little dad seems to tell me that, he's not more powerful than God. Who's more powerful, the living God who's in you, or your little mom or mother-in-law that tells you you did something wrong? Who are you going to trust? Guys, this is foundational for your marriage. Love, submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. He knows who you are. He tells you who you are. Believe him, not your feelings. But embrace your feelings. They're just information. They know how you're doing in that moment. Embrace it, look at it, share it with each other. And get safe get open, and then validate each other's feelings. Wow, honey, you're worried about how much money's in the checking account? Oh, I know what worried feels like. I felt that way before too. Oh, come over here and tell me about worried. You're not inadequate. You're not a failure. You do measure up. And I'll never demean you or belittle you just because you're scared. It's just a feeling. We're both children of God. He tells us we're okay. I'm filled, I'm whole, I'm complete. That's how I deal with my feelings. He tells me who I am. I just deal with my feelings. But I'll never crunch this or suppress this ever again. I'll embrace it, I'll take care of it, and I'll share it. And if you're safe, we'll have a great relationship. You care about me, I'll care about you. But you're in charge of your heart, I'm in charge of mine. Even if you're my spouse, that's how we're going to do it. Does that sound pretty good? All four, all the time. You're going to have an awesome marriage if you're responsible for your own heart, if you show up open and safe, and if you care about each other's hearts. Then the two of you can figure out what you're going to do on Friday night, whether you're going to meet your parents or not. And it's going to be a win-win. Nobody loses. Because you're one flesh, it's your team. If one of you loses, you both lose. It doesn't work. No compromise. A win-win. If anybody ever tells you that marriage takes compromise, run. That person is not speaking the truth. Compromise is bad. A win-win is good. Hash it out. Keep it on the table until you find the win-win. Care for each other deeply. All right, I gotta quit now. So fill out your reactive cycle, and then really make sure in your table time you guys talk through some of these. Okay? Any questions before I go? I'm 6 minutes over. I know it sounds like a lot of stuff. Write this down. This actually comes out of a book. It's called The DNA of Relationships. The DNA of Relationships. The DNA of Relationships. I always recommend it to couples. It's by Gary Smalley. Gary and his sons wrote it with another guy named Bob Paul. And I was working with them for a long time in doing marriage intensives. So this is, I work with it a little bit differently, but this is my formulation of it. All right, we doing okay? I totally wipe you out, are we okay? All right. All right, let me pray for you. We're going to do table time. Is that okay? Yep. And then I'll release you. I got to go paint my office. All right. Father, thank you for all these people here. Thank you for the hearts here, Lord, that you and only you are capable of filling. And I pray that that would be the most important thing, Lord, that they trust you to fill them, to tell them who they are. And as they reaffirm those messages about each other to each other, I pray for awesome marriages that see feelings as information and use feelings as an opportunity to love like you love. So Lord, I pray for freedom and grace and love for every person here and great marriages. So I'll lift them up to you in Jesus' name. Amen. Thanks, guys.
One verse that John likes to share, and I don't think he shared it today, was guard your heart.
Yeah.
It's a wellspring of life.
Wellspring of life.
Yeah, it isn't you give your heart away.
Right.
Yeah,
You guard it.
your
Yeah.
heart.
Proverbs
Yeah.
4:23. That's
Yep.
the best personal responsibility you could have. Guard your heart.
Yep. Great.
Thanks.
Thanks, John.
All right, man.
Yep. Okay. So we've got some great tabletop time. We go to 12:30, so we have 20 minutes, and John's kind of outlined some of your table talk time, but it's your table talk time. So yeah, enjoy it. And we'll see you tomorrow at 9 o'clock.
10:45.
10:45. Sorry, 10:45. 10:45.